You're watching Study with Sudhir. This is your digital classroom. We are looking at the Tempest. This is part 4 of Act 1, Scene 2. And this one introduces a very important character as far as this Shakespearean play is concerned. And he is Caliban. Now, Caliban is the son of the witch called Syocrax, about who we learned in the previous video when Ariel was conversing with Prospero, right? Now, in this particular conversation, the two principal characters will be Prospero and Caliban, but also there is a bit of Miranda who will be woken up from sleep. You recall that just when Ariel has entered, is or about to enter that particular place, Prospero lulls Miranda to sleep and now he kind of wakes her up. So, the particular part of Act 1, Scene 2 starts with Prospero. The moment Ariel exits, he says, "Awake, dear heart, awake. Thou hast slept well, awake." So, he says, now it's time for you to get up. You have slept well. Miranda, the strangeness of your story put heaviness in me. So, the daughter, Miranda, actually thinks that it is because of the very sad story, the story of how Prospero and Miranda were removed from Milan. That's what actually lulled her to sleep. Whereas the fact is, and we know, the reader and the audience knows that it is basically because of the magic of Prospero which managed to lull Miranda to sleep, right? Prospero, shake it off, come on, we will visit Caliban, my slave, who never yields us kind answer, right? Now, he says, now we will go and visit Caliban, who is my slave. So, now we have learnt about Ariel, now we will learn about Caliban, the other slave of Prospero. Miranda, and these are important lines, "It's a villain, sir, I do not love to look on." So, Miranda does not like Caliban, she does not approve of him. "I do not like to look at him," she says, right? And we will know why she says so a little later on in this scene. Prospero, "But as it is, we cannot miss him. He does make our fire, fetch in our wood, and serves in offices that profit us. What ho, slave Caliban, what art thou, speak." So, Prospero says that he refers to him as his slave and says that he does all these jobs for Prospero and Miranda on that particular island. And he says that we cannot dismiss him because he makes our fire, fetches the wood and serves in jobs that are to our advantage. And he refers to him as his slave. So, basically to say that he is someone, it also established the equation between Caliban and Prospero. Prospero refers to Caliban as thou earth, as earth, and earth essentially in this context means low life, earth, low life, right? And it also shows that Prospero still behaves in a sense like the Duke, right? In a kind of his stature is that, and his mindset is that of someone who is a ruler. Caliban, who is not there to be seen on stage, he is saying from within, from inside, saying that there is wood enough within, that there is a lot of wood. Prospero, "Come forth, I say, there is other business for thee. Come, thou tortoise, when." So, he says there are other jobs waiting for you to be done. So, come out, and he refers to him as a tortoise. And why does he call him a tortoise? Essentially, tortoise means someone who works slowly. So, it is meant to be a term of reprimand, in a sense, scolding him, right? Ariel, by the way, at this time re-enters now in the form of a water nymph. And Prospero says, "Fine apparition, my clever Ariel, my quaint Ariel, hark in thine eye." And hark means listen. So, he is approving of what Ariel, the kind of form, the water nymph form that Ariel has taken, and Ariel exits, right? And Prospero has whispered something in Ariel's ear, right? Prospero, "Thou poisonous slave, got by the devil himself, upon thy wicked dam come forth." Now, again you see, if you see the language which Prospero used with Miranda, to an extent with Ariel, and now you see the sharpness of the tongue as far as Prospero is concerned when he is talking and conversing with Caliban, there is a marked difference. He is almost being very abusive with Caliban, and that's for a specific reason, right? He is now referring to how he was born and abuses him in that context. He says, "You poisonous slave, right? That means you are someone who should be abhorred. And you were kind of fathered by the devil himself, because the mother is a witch called Syocrax and the father was the devil himself through your wicked mother, wicked dam, and he says, come out, So he asks him to come out, and that's when Caliban makes his appearance on stage. Now what Caliban says, it gives you a glimpse into the kind of person that Caliban is. Caliban says, as wicked dew, as ever my mother brushed with raven's feather from unwholesome fen, drop on you both a southwest blow on ye, and blister you all over. So Caliban actually gives it back to Prospero in kind, right? And this is a contrast between Ariel and Caliban also, because if you saw in part 3 of Act 1 Scene 2, the video, as we had explained, Ariel is much more submissive. When Prospero scolds him, when he reprimands him, Ariel immediately begs for forgiveness and kind of, adjusts to whatever Prospero wants him to do. But Caliban is not like that. He actually retorts and retorts very sharply. So he says, as wicked dew as ever my mother brushed. So he says that, let, all the kind of dew that my mother kind of brushed from a raven is a reference to a bird which looks pretty closely, pretty much like a crow. So in that sense, not a very beautiful bird. So from a polluted bog. A bog is a wet, muddy ground, right? So the unwholesome fin, which is talking about, that is the pollution from that wet, muddy ground, may it fall on you and pollute you, right? Pollute both of you. And a southwest wind should blow on you and actually bring a lot of blisters on your body. Blisters essentially means, all those kind of what is referred to as fode in Hindi. Blisters on your body, basically referring that you should get sick and ill as a result. What does Prospero say? Now you see the exchange of words, which is almost bordering, almost bordering, it is bordering on abuse. For this be sure, tonight thou shalt have crammed side stitches that shall pen thy breath up. Urchins shall for that vast of night, that they may work all exercise on thee. Thou shalt be pinched as thick as honeycomb, each pinch more stinging than bees that made them. Prospero says, for what you just now said, for the kind of curse that you kind of inflicted on both me and Miranda right now, he says, he obviously does not take it lightly. He says, for all this cursing, tonight you will have a lot of pain in your body, in the joints of your body, a lot of cramps, and those pains will actually take your breath away. It's almost like, you will almost die as a result of that intense pain in your body, right? Urchins is referring basically to goblins, basically naughty spirits, and they will trouble you through the night, for the vast of night, that they may work all exercise on thee. They will all try all their tricks on you. You shall be pinched, and it's almost like he compares it to the honeycomb, because in the honeycomb you see the sting of the bee. The sting of the bee, if you disturb a beehive, you will see the honeycomb stinging you very sharply. So he says that your body will be full of those kind of very, very sharp pinches, right? Caliban, now he says, I must eat my dinner. This island is mine by Syocrax, my mother. So now he's kind of asserting himself much more. He says, which thou takest from me. When thou camest first, thou strokest me and madest much of me, wouldst give me water with berries, is it? And teach me how to name the bigger light and how the less that burn by day and night. And then I loved thee and showed thee all the qualities of the isle, the fresh springs, brine pits, barren place, and fertile. Cursed be that I did so. All the charms of Syocrax, toads, beetles, bats light on you. So now he's talking about the past. He's talking about the fact that there has been a lot of injustice which has been done to him. And how has that happened? Because he says that this island actually belongs to me because I am the son of Syocrax, who used to live here before you two actually descended on this island, and you took away this island from me, which actually rightfully belongs to me because it came from my mother Syocrax, right? When you came here, you pampered me, you were nice to me, you educated me on how to identify the lights, and the lights is a reference to the sun and the moon. And how do you know that? Because he's saying that burn by day as in the sun and night as in the moon, right? And then I loved thee, right? And showed thee all the qualities of the isle as in the island. So I showed you what all different aspects were there on the island, the different minerals, the richness of that island. I showed it all to you, the fresh springs from where to get the water, the saltwater pits, the desert, and the fertile land. I am cursed, he says that I should be cursed that I actually extended all this help to you two, that I did so. For that I should be cursed, because I should have never done all this good to you, father and daughter, right? So he says that I showed you all the natural resources of the island, and despite having done so, this is what Prospero says to him, and for that he says I should indeed be cursed. So he is now cursing that all the negative things, he's cursing that all the negative things like bats, toads, beetles, right, should actually fall on Prospero. He says, I was the king and I was also the subject, and this island belonged to me. But now what you have done is to actually confine me to this hard rock, while you two actually enjoy the pleasures of this beautiful island, right? Prospero, thou most lying slave, thou whom stripes may move, not kindness, I have used thee, filth as thou art, with human care and lodged thee. He says, you are a liar. You are a liar of a slave, right? And he says, yes, I have used you, but he says that you are the kind who cannot be moved with kindness, but it's only the beatings. When he's saying the stripes essentially refers to the stripes that are formed on the back when you are caned, right? The stripes that are formed. So he says that you can be moved only as a result of that harsh caning, as a result of which those stripes will be formed. But I actually treated you with sympathy. I let you live in my house. But what did you do? And that's the important part which will be revealed. He says, filth as thou art, with human care, and lodged thee in mine own cell, till thou didst seek to violate the honor of my child. That you tried to outrage the modesty of my child, that is Miranda, his daughter, and you did that despite my actually extending you the sympathy and the fact that I let you live in my own cell. Oh, wouldn't had been done. Thou didst prevent me, I had peopled else this isle with Calibans. So now the response of Caliban is sure to make Prospero even more angry, because he says, he first laughs, it's almost like in a mocking kind of manner. He says, if I had actually been successful in outraging the modesty of your daughter, I would have actually made Miranda the mother of many Calibans on this particular island, but you prevented me, Prospero. And this, in a sense, now that we know the background of Prospero and Caliban and Miranda, it kind of justifies the harsh treatment that Prospero, the kind of abuse probably that Prospero is kind of showering on Caliban, and also tells you why Miranda initially itself referred to him as a villain, why she is so angry with Caliban. So now you are more aware of the equation between the father-daughter and this particular slave called Caliban. So to what Caliban says, it's not Prospero, but now Miranda reacts, and reacts quite sharply. She calls him an abhorred slave. Abhor means to look at someone in a disgusted manner. So she calls him a disgusting slave, and someone who no kind of goodness would actually take hold. Being capable of all ill, I pitied thee to pains to make thee speak, taught thee each hour one thing or other, when thou didst not savage know thine own meaning. So she says that I actually took pains to teach you the language, because you could not speak anything. You could not speak anything coherent. You would actually speak only incoherent kind of words, right? I actually taught you to speak, to communicate, taught him the art of expression, taught him the language. and this is how you actually speak, right? A thing most brutish, I endured thy purposes with words that made them known, but thy vile race, though thou didst learn, had that in it which good-natured could not abide to be with. Therefore was thou deservedly confined into this rock, who had deserved more than a prison. You actually deserved much more than a prison. You deserved to be thrown into prison, and therefore it was right on my father Prospero's part to actually confine you to this hard rock, because that's what you did, despite my actually helping you become a better person than what you were when you lived here alone on this island. This is what you actually do in return, right? Caliban says, now look at Caliban's sharp language retort. You taught me language, and my profit on it is I know how to curse. The red plague rid you for learning me your language. So he says that yes, you taught me your language, but what I got of it was only that I now know how to curse. And he says, may the red plague, so now he's cursing Miranda, that may the red plague kill you for teaching me your language, right? So that's how Caliban reacts, and it shows an important lesson, right? That Miranda has done the good thing to Caliban by actually trying to make him a human being of sorts, even though he's the son of a devil and a witch. But despite that, the student is absolutely ungrateful, and he actually curses her for actually having taught him her language, and actually goes ahead and curses her. Very important messaging out there. Prospero, hag seat hence. Now Prospero speaks. Fetch us in fuel, and be quick, thou art best to answer other business. So now he refers to him as the offspring, the son of a witch. He says, come here, get the fuel. This basically means get wood for us, and you better be quick with it about answering all the other work that you are supposed to do. You are actually shrugging at me with a lot of hatred. If you fail to do what I am asking you to do right now, or if you are unwilling to do that, what I will do is to torture you, torture your body, but by having a whole lot of cramps. So basically Prospero warning him, threatening him that he will use his magic on Caliban in order to torture his body with a whole lot of body pain. And he says, I'll fill all your bones with a lot of ache, right? And make you cry out in such pain that the wild beasts will also tremble at the kind of painful noise that you will actually end up making. Caliban, and that kind of finally brings Caliban under some kind of control, because he's obviously aware of the power of Prospero's magic. So he says, no, pray thee, I must obey, his art is of such power. And this is like an aside. It's not something which Prospero is able to hear. It would control my damned god Citibos and make a vassal of him. So he says that the power of the magic of Prospero is such that it can control even Citibos, who was the deity that Syocrax actually prayed to, right? And it would make even Citibos a slave to Prospero. Now the interesting part, so Prospero says, so slave, hence get going. So he refers to him once again as a slave and asks him to get going. Now the interesting part is that Robert Browning, the famous poet Robert Browning, actually wrote a poem called Caliban about Citibos in 1864, in which Caliban actually talks and reflects upon Citibos. So that's an interesting poem, in case if any one of you are interested. I doubt if any one of you would be, but it's an interesting take on this particular character that is mentioned in this particular scene, and how Robert Browning wrote an entire poem on that. So Caliban has exited. That brings us to this end of this interaction between Caliban and Prospero. Very important character Caliban is, so you need to understand his character, and what is more important is the equation between Prospero and Miranda and Caliban, and the contrast between Caliban and Ariel. These are some themes which you would need to be mindful of. After this, we have the entry of Ferdinand into the scene, which we will do in two parts. The final part of Act 1, Scene 2, where Ferdinand enters, and there is this interaction between Prospero, Miranda and Ferdinand as well. Okay, so that we will do in part 5 and 6 of Act 1, Scene 2. Thank you very much for watching.